The transaction hit my phone like a slap. Ticketing fee, $76.88. It was 9:03 p.m. on a Thursday, 2 hours after my paycheck landed, right on schedule, as always. I stared at the notification like it had come from someone else's account. We hadn't planned any travel, and nothing in our shared budget, color-coded and balanced down to the cent, accounted for that. I walked over to the kitchen sink and ran cold water over my hands, an old habit from my college days when I'd pull all-nighters reviewing financial statements. It used to help me think. My wife, Julia, was in the next room. Yoga mat rolled up in the corner, laptop open, headphones in. Her eyes flicked toward me but didn't linger. We'd built our system together. The budgeting tool we used would flag unrecognized or suspicious expenses. "Let's be intentional," she'd said when we combined finances, back when managing money felt like building a future, not rationing one. But lately, she'd been renaming things. Health and wellness, she'd smile vaguely. I'd glance at a $65 charge for something called Essential Alignments. Then a $92 debit labeled EM Restore. Always just under $100, always the day my check arrived. I'd ask gently and she'd deflect, joking about my spreadsheet brain, then walking off with that breezy, unbothered air that made me feel paranoid for even noticing. 3 weeks ago, she stopped uploading receipts. Last week, she started closing her laptop when I entered the room. And just 2 nights ago, I caught her watching a video titled something about detaching from relational expectations. That's when I started quietly logging every inconsistency, each flagged transaction, every renamed charge. The trail wasn't loud, but it was persistent. Tonight, I checked the list of connected accounts within our finance tracker. One stood out, a prepaid debit card under her name. I'd never seen it before. I clicked through to the transaction summary. $28.49, gas station near a small town. $14.99, boutique coffee shop. $76.88, ticketing fee, flagged for identity review. I froze. Not because of the totals, but because of the timing. These charges appeared every other Thursday, payday. Julia walked in behind me, still wearing her soft lavender wrap and smelling faintly of eucalyptus. I quickly minimized the screen. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah, just checking some alerts." She kissed the side of my head. "You and your numbers." I didn't respond, because this time the numbers were talking back. I waited until she was asleep, breathing slow and even, her back turned, and opened my laptop. I traced the prepaid card's funding, direct transfers from our joint account, labeled as wellness bundles and spiritual services. But when I searched the names, no businesses came up. Just one hit, an alias profile tied to a digital payment platform registered in another state. I clicked it. The photo wasn't hers. And the recovery contact listed? It was a man's name. How do you react when initial doubts turn into undeniable, unsettling proof? By the next morning, I wasn't wondering if Julia was hiding something. I was trying to figure out how deep it went. I took an early lunch and closed my office door. I'd brought my personal laptop, and I opened it to the spreadsheet I'd been building, flagged expenses, modified labels, account logins. I wasn't just tracking anomalies anymore. I was reconstructing a pattern. That prepaid debit card? It had been funded 15 times over 6 months, always on a Thursday, always within hours of my paycheck clearing. I tried searching for the man's name, what I'd seen in the payment account recovery field. Just a first name and last initial. No social media accounts matched. But buried in a travel forum, I found a post under that name asking about yoga retreat centers in Arizona. Julia had mentioned Arizona once, offhandedly as a place to recharge. A colleague knocked, but I waved her off. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I'd ignored for months, the missed eye contact, the vague answers, the sudden weekend retreats, had been stacking behind my back like dry kindling. Later that afternoon, I approached someone I hadn't talked to much outside of meetings, Mara, our internal auditor. Older, calm, a widow who kept to herself but ran the cleanest audits in the department. I'd seen her shred an entire project proposal for one undocumented transaction. I caught her by the coffee machine. "Mara, can I run something by you?" She raised an eyebrow. "If it's about missing funds, go through compliance." "It's not work-related," I said. "It's personal, but it's about money." Back in my office, I showed her the spreadsheet. Her eyes narrowed at the labeled entries. "Consistent amounts," she muttered, "low enough to fly under review protocols. Different labels, no linked receipts." She looked up. "She knows you track things." "She called me obsessive," I said. "She used your system against you," Mara replied, like it was obvious. She pointed to the funding pattern. "This is structured. It's not a one-time lie. She's maintained this deception with discipline. That's not a fling. That's a plan." I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just betrayal, it was logistics. She'd built a shadow budget, a private economy under my roof. "Start pulling download histories," Mara said. "Any wellness invoices, flight confirmations, emails from those vendors. Save everything. And don't confront her yet. If she's used your identity or linked anything to your accounts, you need documentation." That night, Julia said she was going to a sound bath. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and watched her drive off. Then I opened our home computer. She rarely used it for anything serious. But her email was still logged in. 30 minutes of sorting, and I found a folder labeled Restore Path. It was buried under a stack of promotional junk. Inside were PDF files of e-tickets, 2 flights, one from our city to Phoenix, the other a return flight for only one person. Attached to a calendar invite labeled Alignment Week. I clicked the name of the sender. The same man's name, his full one this time. I searched the folder again and found a note she'd written to herself, a draft message. I couldn't tell if she'd ever sent it. "I know he'll be okay. He has order. He needs control. This retreat is about releasing stories. I can't be a character in someone else's stability anymore." I stared at those words like they were written in fire. I thought of the nights I worked late to cover her wellness trainings, of how she thanked me with a smile, how I'd believed that smile, of how I'd bent our financial plan to pay off her student debt first because she said mine was more manageable. Now I saw it clearly. I wasn't her partner. I was her stepping stone. The scariest part? I couldn't even tell when she stopped seeing me. I sent the files to a secure folder and called Mara. "You were right, there's a second flight." "But not for her," she asked. "She's going alone?" I said, teeth clenched. "She's not coming back." There was a pause. "You need to talk to someone about this. Legal advice. If she's moved funds without consent or used your credentials, this isn't just emotional. It could be criminal." I ended the call and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened our budget tool again and noticed a small red notification I'd overlooked. A new credit application, opened in my name 4 weeks ago. She hadn't just stolen from our joint account, she'd taken out debt as me. What would you do when faced with irrefutable proof of betrayal that demands an immediate response? I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. By dawn, I'd gathered every file, screenshot, and log entry into a single folder. I labeled it Contingency and backed it up to an encrypted drive. Julia's betrayal wasn't just personal, it had legal weight, and I was done being quiet. That evening, I waited until she came home. She entered with the glow of someone freshly cleansed, carrying a rolled mat and humming some tuneless melody. The scent of burning sage clung to her. "Hey," she said, surprised to see me standing in the kitchen. "You're home early." "I needed to talk," I said. She set the mat down and reached for a glass of water. "Now's not great. I've got a virtual group session. It won't take long." She paused, then shrugged, leaning on the counter like nothing was wrong. I placed a printed document between us, a ledger, labeled transactions, dates, transfer paths, timestamps. Then my phone, screen lit, quietly recording audio. "Tell me again," I said, voice level, "how I'm the one who needs control." She didn't move at first, just stared, then slowly picked up the paper. Her eyes moved across the page, the color draining from her face. "Where did you get this?" "You left your account open on the desktop. You should log out next time." Her voice dropped. "You had no right?" "No right," I interrupted, "to see transactions in my name? Debt opened under my credit profile?" She swallowed hard, her confidence unraveling. "That card, the trips, the payments. Who is he, Julia?" Her face twitched, and for the first time in months, she stopped pretending. "He's not a criminal," she said quietly. "He's a guide. He helped me see how stuck I was, how small I'd become." "No," I replied, barely containing the burn in my throat. "You didn't become small. You just wanted more than what we agreed to build. But instead of telling me, you lied, systematically, for months." "I tried," she said, her voice cracking. "But every time I brought something up, you default to your plans, your projections, your spreadsheets." My voice was calm, but every syllable came with a cost. "I never planned this life without you. You did that on your own." We stood there, silence clawing the walls around us. "I'm leaving next week," she finally said, as if that would soften the damage. I nodded once. "It's too late for that. You already did." That's when the theatrical moment unfolded, one I hadn't planned, but had prepared for. I turned the phone screen toward her, still recording. "And that statement," I asked, "that your new account is clean? Because the financial institution flagged the new card's origin, fraud tied to my identity. You didn't just betray me, you impersonated me." Her eyes widened. "I didn't mean for it to escalate, but it did," I said, "and now I have to clear my name, so you'll need to explain it, to legal, not to me." She stepped back. "You're going to destroy my life." "No, you already started that. I'm just not going down with you." There was a pounding knock at the door. We both froze. I opened it to find Mara standing there, holding an envelope. "Just got the internal report," she said, stepping in. "This came through my system. Credit applications linked to your work credentials." If she used a work-tied email, it's not just personal anymore. Julia backed against the wall, breath shallow. "You dragged this into my professional life?" I said, stunned. "No, she choked. "I didn't think anyone would trace it." "You were wrong." As Mara handed over the envelope, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, then held it up to show me. "They're flagging a second application, different name, same address, submitted this morning." I blinked. Julia's eyes darted from me to the phone. I realized in that moment, she wasn't just escaping. She was replacing me, financially, professionally, piece by piece. And she wasn't done yet. How do you proceed when the truth is revealed, but the battle is far from over? The next morning, I couldn't move. I sat at the kitchen table long after Julia had gone, if she even spent the night there. I couldn't remember hearing her come back. I stared at the ledger, the printout crumpled at the edges now from how tightly I'd held it. She hadn't just lied. She'd weaponized my trust, my routines, the very habits that once held our lives together. I kept thinking, was I really that easy to sideline? I'd spent years believing that discipline was strength, that if I held everything together, we'd be fine. But now, everything was unraveling, and I was the last to know. Still, there's something rage can't destroy: resolve. And in the space left by betrayal, resolve grew like a second spine. By noon, I was seated in a quiet office lined with framed degrees and a single potted plant. Across from me sat Lena Bradford, a local attorney with a reputation for handling fraud and divorce cases with surgical precision. "You documented everything?" she asked, flipping through the packet I'd prepared. I nodded. Every transaction, her alias account, the debt filed under my name. Lena tapped her pen against her notepad. "We can move quickly. Freeze joint assets, file a fraud report. Get ahead of this before it affects your credit, your job, your future." She used a work-tied email, I added. She may have exposed my employer, too. That changed her tone. Then we're not just talking civil issues. This could escalate. I signed the retainer that afternoon. My hand didn't shake. Back home, I closed our shared online accounts, rerouted my payroll, changed every password. With Mara's help, I submitted a report to our company's compliance team and flagged the potential breach. I wasn't just salvaging my name, I was building a firewall between the wreckage and what came next. That evening, I texted Julia. We need to talk, in person. No reply, but I saw the read receipt. I sat in silence, listening to the refrigerator hum. My phone lit up again, this time from Lena. She's already responded to the notice. Her lawyer just filed a countersuit, claiming emotional duress. She's preemptively accusing you of financial control and mental harm. My blood went cold. She wasn't retreating. She was rewriting the story. I stared at the message, then stood, opened my laptop, and pulled up one final folder I hadn't touched since this started. Old video calls, messages, financial planning meetings, everything she'd once participated in, willingly, smiling, praising our structure, making joint decisions. Recordings I'd saved out of habit, for planning reference. Now, they were evidence. I uploaded them into a secure drive, labeled it Pattern of Consent. This wouldn't be a quiet retreat into ruin. I wasn't going to be the villain in a story she authored. But just as I hit save, another alert popped up. A second address had been added to my credit report. Julia had opened a mail forwarding service under my last name. When your plan is in motion, but the stakes suddenly rise, how far are you willing to go?
The hearing took less than 20 minutes. She sat across from me in a beige blazer, flanked by her attorney, who tried to cast shadows from half-truths. But Lena's preparation and the evidence cut through everything. Video recordings of our joint financial meetings, screenshots of her account manipulation, testimonies from Mara and our company's compliance team. The pattern was clear: deception, not duress. The judge's expression never shifted, but the ruling said it all. The fraudulent credit line was nullified. Julia was liable for misrepresentation and identity misuse. The divorce would proceed under gross financial misconduct, granting me a larger share of the remaining assets. Afterward, she avoided my eyes. She didn't apologize, just gathered her things in silence. But I didn't need her words. Her silence, this time, was its own confession. In the weeks that followed, I focused on reclaiming my life. Not by erasing what happened, but by redrawing the lines of who I was without her. I started running again, not to escape, but to rebuild rhythm, something she couldn't corrupt. I reconnected with an old friend from college who had opened a small consulting firm. Helping him revamp his books gave me purpose beyond damage control. I joined a quiet group therapy circle, not for healing in the trendy sense, but to say the things that didn't fit in spreadsheets. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who spoke plainly, without performance. And strangely, that's where strength found me. Not in rage or revenge, but in the silence after justice, when I realized I could finally speak freely without fearing how she'd spin my words. The practical aspects fell into place. I sold the house we once shared. She declined her right to buy me out, probably couldn't afford it anymore. The proceeds went into a new investment account under my name only. Clean slate. She tried to contact me once, weeks later, through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted closure. I didn't respond. Because closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. I'd already made mine. If you asked me what I lost, I could name 100 things. Time, trust, peace. But what I gained? Clarity, boundaries, a life where I no longer ask for permission to protect myself. I used to believe that discipline meant rigidity, that being precise made me cold. But now I know, being orderly doesn't mean being weak. It means knowing what matters and refusing to lose it quietly.
I'm not rebuilding the same structure she dismantled. I'm designing something better, brick by brick, without apologies. She said I controlled the money, but I never tried to control her. She just didn't like being seen clearly. How would you handle a betrayal that threatens both your future and your name? Share your own story or thoughts in the comments below.